Hello, and welcome to On the Way. So I have, over the last, I would say 9 months, tried to get this podcast going several times, several different ways. And when I was brought into this area and was shown the place I was going to live, where I am right now, I knew it would be in this room, and I knew it would be in front of this window. But what I didn't know is how difficult it was going to be for me to get here, to finally get it launched and the videos published, because it's been a trial, but it's okay. You live and learn. So I wanted to do an introduction episode to explain what the podcast is going to be about, because then you can get a good idea if you want to keep listening or not. I'm going to start with my childhood. I was raised in a Christian home. My parents took me and my siblings, there were 5 of us, to Sunday school and vacation Bible school. We didn't go to church very often because my parents were deaf, and there wasn't a deaf ministry at the church that we went to. It was a Lutheran church. Later on in my life, though, when we got a little bit older, my parents found a deaf ministry in a Baptist church, so we started going to that church. But they really instilled a deep faith in all of us. My parents have deep faith, and I thank them for raising me the way they did, because without God, I don't know what I would have done in some of the deepest, darkest times of my life. So let's fast forward. I was married for a little over 25 years to a childhood sweetheart. We had our family together. We ran a family business, and I raised my children in church somewhat and raised them to be very open to every faith, because that's how I felt. And so we did attend a Lutheran church, but you can only plant a seed, and they are all in their own spiritual walks right now, and I'm very proud of that. Very proud of them, I should say. But my marriage, towards the end of my marriage, I started wanting more from God. I didn't want to just go to church and raise my children in church. I wanted a relationship, a deep, intimate relationship with God. And I have to say that a lot of what fueled that was watching Oprah Winfrey go through her spiritual journey at the time. She had a lot of different people come on her show. She had different religions. She talked about different books, and she was very open to everything. And it really inspired me to want to reach for more as well. And as I reached for more, I realized that I needed God more and more, because my marriage was coming to an end. It was an amicable separation. We've been friends longer than we haven't, I think, so it ended well. And then I remarried and continued my spiritual journey. And then we moved to Germany. I lived in Germany for almost 8 years. But had I not lived in Germany, I don't know that my spiritual growth would have happened as rapidly or as deeply as it did, because we lived in Colorado, and living back home in Colorado, working, I'm a nurse by profession, and so working as a nurse, my family around, my children, responsibilities, all of those things would have gotten in the way. So because I was afforded the time. So when we went to Germany, I didn't work because I couldn't work as a nurse there. And I was afforded time to really explore my spirituality and my love for God and my trust in Him and my faith. And it was shortly after we moved to Germany. It was March of 2013. And I was feeling really kind of sad. I'm not a depressed person, but I was sad because it was kind of frightening. We had great friends in Germany and a great place to live temporarily until we found the place that we ended up living. But I was so far from my family and friends, the people back home, so far from everything I knew. But I am an adventurous spirit, so it didn't really scare me in that way. It just scared me that I was so far from my family, my children. My grown children. My daughter wasn't quite grown. She was in high school. And she encouraged us to go because she wanted to be visiting us there as well. But So on these days, in the very early part of living there, I was in prayer a lot. I was leaning on God a lot, and knew that his presence was near me. I felt his love, but it was still difficult. And so in the area where we lived, which was the Eifel area of Germany, we had lots of hills, and in the hills there are trails everywhere to go hiking. And so I started hiking every day, and it was there in nature where I could really feel the presence of God. And I loved it. I loved the hiking. I loved being out in the fresh air, and it was a perfect time of year. It was a little drizzly on some days because it was March, but we were coming into spring, so it was a beautiful time of year. And I just loved being out there and talking to him. So for me, prayer is just talking. It's just talking to God. It's just telling him my feelings that day, asking him for guidance, for love and support. That to me is prayer. And I was sharing with our friends, we had a tradition called Stammtisch, which is once a week you meet with your friends on the same night, the same restaurant, at the same time. Stammtisch means same table. So it just means that, and that encompasses what that means. And so on one particular Friday, I was sharing with our friends that I love to do this hiking. And they warned me. They said, you need to be careful. There's a lot of Wildschwein, so that's wild pig or wild boar, and they're very aggressive in this part of Germany. And it was coming on to spring, so to be very careful, they were warning me, which I appreciated. So this one day in particular, I was hiking and feeling particularly sad this day for some reason, and was really leaning on him and asking him, asking him what I was really doing there. What is this about? Even in retrospect, I know, but at the time I was a little bit lost. I'm like, if I'm not working as a nurse, which is what I felt like was a calling of mine, because I've always known that I was put here to be a servant. And so I like serving people, and nursing was one way to do that. And so this one particular day, and you have to excuse me, because I will get, I was taking a sip of water. I will get a little emotional from time to time. I'm a hyper-emotional person. But this one particular day, as I was hiking, being aware of in the back of my mind of the Wildschwein, I started to feel a presence of some sort. And I thought, I'm wondering, my hearing is not so great. So I'm hypersensitive to frequencies, smells, frequencies of vibrations. And so I was feeling something, and I thought, it's the Wildschwein. And so I thought maybe if I could get a stick and just kind of push them away to keep them away from me, just enough to get away. Because I can't run. I'm not a runner. I never have been. So I was like, well, maybe a stick. So I find a stick nearby. I pick it up, and I'm coming around the bend where I'm thinking I'm feeling this presence. And I thought, maybe it's a dog. Maybe it'll just be a dog. Maybe there's somebody with their dog. I didn't know what I was feeling. And as I came around the corner, because it's very wooded in this area, and I couldn't see past a certain place. And as I came around and could see the road continuing, I happened onto a light. I don't know how to describe it except that it was in front of me, but part of me. It wasn't, people have asked me, because I've shared this story with some people, and they've asked me, they're like, was it like out there? And I said, no, the moment I turned to look, I was in this light. And immediately I knew that I was in the presence of God. And the reason why I knew that is because I felt so much love, such a warm like a hug. And immediately tears were flowing from my face. And I dropped to my knees. And I started crying because I was overwhelmed with gratitude and feeling so blessed. And I remember saying, I'm not worthy of this. And I heard clearly, everyone is worthy of my love. Get off your knees. Excuse me, I'm sorry. So I got up and I guess I dropped the stick at that point. I don't remember. I just know that my hands were down to my side, and I was just letting him, or letting that light, that love envelop me, and let it just heal me from the worry and the sadness that I had been feeling. And it was the most powerful love I've ever felt, ever in my entire life. I felt like, and someone did ask me, did you ever feel like it was separate from you? I never did. The moment I turned that corner, I came around that bend, even though I just got a glimpse of the light then, it was almost immediate that it was part of me. And so that's why I continually tell people, He is in us and we are in Him. I've felt it. I've known it. I mean, I've known it in a moment of real clarity. Anyway, as the moment subsided, I was just saying over and over and over, thank you so much, Father. That's how I refer to God, as my Heavenly Father. And I just thanked Him over and over because I just couldn't believe how blessed I was to experience that. So anyway, fast forward maybe a month or so. At the time, I'm going to back up a little bit. At the time, I didn't know how profound that was going to be for me. I didn't know what it meant. In retrospect, I do know that it was and at the time I knew that He was calming me. He was just giving me some peace and calm so that I could stay focused instead of focusing on missing my family. And in retrospect, I know that I needed something very somewhat tangible, I guess. As this light, it wasn't just a thought in my head that sometimes you question, is it your subconscious? Is it you're talking to yourself or whatever? I needed something to say, I'm here and we've got work to do. So fast forward about a month or so, we moved into a beautiful place. We were very blessed. It was in the middle of hills. It was what used to be a castle. It was castle grounds, and the house we actually lived in was the Kutscher house, which is the carriage house where the castle would keep their carriages. And it was a 600-year-old building, and it was a 3-bedroom home. But our backyard is actually where the castle was. But anyway, it's in the middle of these beautiful hills. And so I hiked them almost daily. And I was so excited to spend that time with God. So before I would start my hike, I would be in prayer. I did my devotion. I read not just the Bible, but I read other books by other people, and I wanted everything. I wanted to know about Judaism, Hinduism. I wanted to know about everything because every religion reaches for God. It's just in a different way. So I wanted to feel it all. I wanted to know everything. And while I am so far from being any kind of scholar, I don't know, I couldn't tell you the basis of any religion besides Christianity, and I can't quote scripture. I can tell you a story I heard in the Bible and what it meant to me, but I'm not one of those people who's gifted with the talent of quoting scripture. But I wanted to know about all of it. And I felt like that was part of what I needed to know, so that now with this podcast and the video, and the reason I'm making the video is because I have a lot of deaf family and friends who could not listen to a podcast and would want to know what the podcast was about. And they, would like to be touched. I would like for God to touch them, them as well, the deaf community as well. And so for me to be able to make a video where they can hit a closed caption button and be able to follow along with my journey was important to me. So that's why I'm doing the videos as well. So that's the beginning of the journey. I didn't know what that all was going to entail. I didn't know that I was going to end up sitting here in a small town in Michigan recording this and sharing it with hopefully a lot of people who need to hear about God, because He's still here. And I've got some stories that will curl your hair. And those will be shared soon, I promise. So this is my idea for the podcast. So I want to say how the podcast came to be. So in September of 2021, I had only been living in my home about 9 months. And I was always in prayer, always talking to God. And I was working in my yard, and I heard clearly it's about time to think about selling the house. And I was shocked because I had just bought the house. I just finished the renovations that I wanted to make. I absolutely loved my home. And I'm hearing, I want you to pack up your stuff and travel the country and tell people I'm here. And I was like, okay, can I stay till Christmas? Because I really wanted to have Christmas in my home. I'm all about Christmas. I want to have Christmas in my home with my grandchildren, my kids. 2 of my kids lived in Illinois. That's where I was living. And I just left it at that. I kept hearing March, and so I thought I was going to put my house on the market in March. And that's not how that happened. So I'll share that in another episode. But what I wanted to say was, as I'm doing this, I've done this. I've sold the home. Everything's in storage. I'm traveling the country. And it was about a year. I'd left March of 2022. So March of 23, I was driving somewhere. I don't remember where. And my second son had called me. I have 3 children. I have 2 boys and a girl. And my second son, Mark, had called me and said, Mom, I was in prayer and meditation this morning, and God made it clear to me that you are to do a podcast. And I said, a podcast? About what? And he said, I don't know that. I just know you're supposed to do a podcast. I'm like, okay. And so I went into prayer and meditation about it. And my journey, all the people that God led me to see. So part of the journey was God would take me to certain people who needed to hear from Him. And all those people, all those interactions were flooding my mind. The journey that I had traveled when I was in Germany, all the things that I learned, all the things that happened to me, how I was led by Him, all came flooding to my mind. And that's when I knew that's what this is about. So as I got ready to make the podcast and realized I might have 5 or 6 episodes, but that might be it. I don't know what else I'd talk about. And then I heard a very gentle, what about some of the people that you've talked to? What about some of those people I brought you to? What about some of those children? They have great stories. And they do. And I'm excited to share their story with you. I will share how I met them, but their stories need to be told by them. And I'm excited for them to share them because they are real proof that God is here. And so I'm excited about that. So I do want to put out there that if you've listened this long, thank you. And if this sounds like something you might want to listen to the next couple of episodes, I'll be sharing more of my story. But at the end of these episodes, I am going to be not really interviewing people, but talking with them so that they can share their story on here and reach more people and make people realize that He touches a lot of us. We just haven't been real vocal about it. And now it's time. So if you have a story where God has led you in an incredible way, if you have a story that you just want to share, a testimony or anything that you think that is what you need to share, then you can email me. My email is tammyblake@tammyblake.com, and I will email you back, and we'll set up maybe a phone conversation, and we'll hopefully get you on here. So I'm excited to finally get this done. Like I said, I've tried this several times. I even had several episodes recorded, and I'm glad this is finally done and we can get going. All right, I love you guys, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.